Richard Seymour. Richard, thank you for joining the show. We want to apologize in advance if we're not totally on our A game, since we just inhaled some smelling salts, which is supposed to make you more locked in. So Nick and I are locked in, but Brew may have overdone it a bit.
Well, I did it in one nostril, so which I still feel it up here in my forehead somewhere. But
no, it takes a little getting used to for sure.
Man.
So I totally understand.
Was that like a regular? How often did you do that during your career?
Yeah, so I would do it for sure. So I would do it maybe about 2 or 3 times, like pregame, and then maybe about 4 or 5 times throughout the game. So like different series and that sort of thing coming out for the halftime or whatnot.
Wow.
But I was certainly a smelling salt guy.
Just before Nick derails the conversation and talks about interesting poker hands that you guys have seen on the internet.
So what I will say before you even get started, I did not know that Nick is a high-stakes crusher in poker. He's a crusher. He crushed all of the guys we were in the tournament this weekend. And nothing but high praise for Mr. Nick Wright.
Wow. Listen,
talk about the flop
I try to
that
keep, listen, the thing is this. Brew and Wilds try to minimize my trips to Vegas as Nick's out there playing cards. And so it's fine. Everybody can't have multiple talents. You obviously did. You're an all-time great poker player and a Hall of Fame football player. I'm doing my best in a couple of areas, but I do want to talk to you about
more than your best.
another place that you and I have a commonality, which is, I imagine, belief in the 2025, I can't believe I'm saying this, Las Vegas Raiders. And so, listen, I think the Raiders have a chance to be really good this year because of the upgraded coach and quarterback. I think Genty, all of it. Like, what for you as someone with a history with the team and a real investment in the team, what would you consider a successful Raiders season?
Well, I'll say this. So obviously, I played under the late great Al Davis, and kept a really good relationship with his son Mark, and now being a co-owner with the Raiders. First and foremost to me is about the legacy and the rich history of the Raiders and what they really represent. And so we always want to put a product on the field that our fans can be proud of. And I think, obviously bringing in Coach Pete Carroll, I think he's a great culture builder. And even if you look at the assistant coaches, because even when I was in New England, obviously it was Bill Belichick. But if you look, we had Charlie Weiss, Romeo Crennel, a lot of really good assistant coaches that can also help, develop the talent that's on the field. So it's not just one guy. But to that point, I think, we have the right coaches in place that can really develop the talent that we have.
Week 1, Raiders in Foxborough.
Week 1.
Raiders in Foxborough. So what do you think about the Patriots season, and do you have a take on Vrabel recently jumping into the practice training camp fight with the Commanders?
Yeah, you know what? If you just told me it was a coach that jumped into a fight, one, I would have said it was Vrabel. 2, I probably would have went Dan Campbell, right? And then maybe Sean McVay. I could see him getting in there and being energetic, but I'm certainly not surprised at Vrabel, and I'll have to call him and give him a hard time after I watch the footage.
Up there in New England, they obviously have high hopes for Drake Maye. What are you expecting from him in his second season?
Yeah, well, what I will say is he can have a great season after the first game, so because it's the Raiders and the Patriots week 1. So after that, but, I think, I think most quarterbacks will tell you that it's not just, what they do on the field. It's also, you want to be surrounded by great talent, and, you want to have a good defense. You want to have, the right coaching staff, the right play caller. And I think Josh McDaniels being back in New England is going to be great for Drake Maye. And obviously Vrabel, he, as a coach, I think he'll push the right buttons to get him to go. And he's going to, have that region excited again about putting some wins on the board.
I wonder, Richard, if you have an interesting insight, not to Micah's specific situation, but to if people don't know your history, you're top 10 pick with the Patriots. As soon as you get there, start winning Super Bowls. You're a great player. Right. You're an All-Pro. And then abruptly you're traded right before the start of a season. Right. And it was, I don't want to say it was over money, but it was probably, money had to do with it. And so that happens. And you felt on the front end how cold and calculating a team can be, even if you do nothing but produce. How does that inform your opinion of Micah's approach and his situation right now with the Cowboys, either generally or specifically?
No, that's a great, I think you laid that up the right way, because I have a unique perspective, obviously being a former player who's, been at the top, and I've also held out a time or two in my career. And so I can understand the dynamics. I think, he's earned the right to be one of the top paid players in the league. And I'm all about players understanding and knowing their value and what he brings to the table. And then I also now, being on the other side of it, have a pretty unique perspective and, being a co-owner of the Raiders. And I think you always want to keep your best players in-house. It didn't always work that way, but I'd be shocked if Micah, leaves Dallas. I think, it's kind of par for the course for Dallas. It's happened even going back to, Emmitt Smith, Deion Sanders and all of the guys. And so, you think about Ezekiel and that, even the receiver, CD Lamb as well. And so, I think it's par for the course. I think Jerry enjoys it as well. And, but I think Micah is going about it the right way. And, he should be paid, one of the top defenders in the league, if not the top.
Now, Richard, you missed games when you held out, right? It wasn't just training camp, because I know you had a few different sort of bumpy roads, right?
Yeah. Did I miss any games? I'm not sure if I missed any games or not. I think most of my, I think most of my stuff was in the off season.
No, but the Raiders sent you that infamous 5-day letter. He's one of the only guys. That letter I'm always talking about. He's one of the only guys to actually get sent it. Because if Micah were to leave, remember
the AWOL,
the AWOL thing, the 5-day letter. When he got traded, he didn't immediately report to the Raiders, and they sent him the letter. But there's only like 3 guys ever that have been sent that letter, and he's one of the. But he won his appeal.
So you've never missed a game. Do you think that Micah missing games is on the board? And what do you think that does to a team's kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, vibe if your best defensive player isn't on the field?
Yeah, well, I think the goal is to hammer something out here in the off season. Obviously training camp is important. I think you build a lot of camaraderie with your guys. You get the repetitions. But I also remember too, I maybe missed a couple of weeks of training camp until my deal got done. But I do think he'll eventually come into camp, and hopefully, this is just will be a thing of the past, and it'll be a win-win for both sides. And I think anytime you get a deal done in the National Football League, it's going to be a lot of money, and you want to do a deal where obviously you get your guarantees, you have the structure right, you're well compensated, but you also look on the other side too and say, well, from a team friendly standpoint, how can I be of assistance to get, more players as well, under the cap. And so I was all about doing a deal where it will be a win-win and, do the right thing on both sides. And so I think, when you have the right representation, and obviously I did in Eugene Parker, and so because I feel like firmly, if you're one of the best players at your position, you also need to have representation and an agent that really understands the dynamics of football and, is responsible in getting the deal done the right way. And so, now being on and I can see it from both sides, but I do think he'll be there for week 1. I think, where did they go to Philly? Week 1. I think he'll be there. He'll be there.
Richard, one of the other huge storylines going into this season is Travis Hunter going both ways full time.
Right.
I know it's obviously very different position than you played, but I'm skeptical as to whether somebody can do that at the NFL level. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, well it's funny. So I've been knowing Travis since high school here in Georgia. He's been a rival high school kid, and know his family very well from that standpoint. And he's always been a tremendous athlete and a really good kid. So I'll say that first and foremost. And just in terms of playing both sides of the ball, I mean, he has the ability to do it, but you also think about the wear and tear over the course of a career. So I think I'd probably stick on one side of the ball, and maybe in critical situations, flip sides or something like that. But I'm sure his coaching staff, I think it needs to be monitored how much wear and tear that he can get. And so that's kind of where I stand on it. But he's certainly an athlete that can, play on either side of the ball at a very high level. But I see him more as a receiver, and then in critical situations, maybe third down, a gotta-have-it situations, he can go in on defense as well.
All right, real quick before you go, when you and I talked in Vegas on Friday, one of the first people that came up is our mutual dear friend, Coach Eric Mangini. Now, I texted Eric saying you were going to be on the show, and to be fair, he did say, quote, he is a great guy who's crazy talented and made coaching fun. He also said that your rookie year, you guys had regular friendly wagers about whether or not you would get 2 sacks in a game, and I quote, that was a very nice supplement to my salary while it lasted. So knowing,
here's what I say about that. So he was smart. So he would call a defense where he knew I wasn't going to be rushing on a few plays. So I do got some bones to pick with Coach Mangini.
Richard, thank you so much. Best of luck with the Raiders ownership outside of week 1.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
See you in Vegas soon, bro.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.